Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's virtual training session, Federal Resources for K-12 Security Threats and Incidents. My name is Fitz McDonough, and I am a program associate with the CISA School Safety Task Force, and I will be moderating today's event. Before we do get started with the presentation, please follow the link published in the Q&A tab to access polling questions before today's training if you have not done so already. As a note, these polls will be available for the next few slides, so if you have not answered them yet, that is okay. Additionally, talking about the question and answer tab, I'd like to point out the question and answer box on the right side of your screen. Please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will do our best to answer them as quickly as we can, or at the end during our live Q&A session if we have time. We'll take a quick look at today's agenda. We'll cover the objectives for today's virtual training. I will introduce our speakers. From there, we will talk about the CISA threat guidance and K-12 cybersecurity resources. We'll hear from the CISA Office of Bombing Prevention, or OBP. We will also hear from the U.S. Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center, also known as NTAC. And then we will hear from the CISA School Safety Task Force on some additional school safety resources. Following that, as mentioned, we will have a Q&A session at the end, time permitting. The main focus of today's event is multifold. First, to identify and address current threats facing K-12 schools and school districts. Second, to provide an overview of relevant resources, products, and tools to enhance K-12 school safety and security. And third, to offer references for follow-up, questions, or additional information requests. I'm joined by some fantastic speakers today who I'm now pleased to introduce you to. First, Katie Lord, the acting R2 and R3 for the National Threat Assessment Center, part of the United States Secret Service. Curtis Tilley, the training section chief for the CISA Counter IED Training and Awareness Branch. And Ryan Streeter, the product and training branch manager for the CISA School Safety Task Force. With that, I'd like to hand things over to Ryan from the School Safety Task Force. Ryan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Fitz, and thank you, Katie, Kurt, and all of you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to sharing all of these great school safety resources with you, and to start, I would like to transition the focus to some of our resources offered by partners within the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. Next slide, please, Fitz. The first resource we would like to discuss today is the CISA Social Media Threat Guidance, released in December. This infographic is a new CISA product that highlights social media threats affecting school districts in the United States. It provides mitigation and response measures for social media threats directed at school districts and connects school safety stakeholders to the suite of tools and resources provided by CISA and its partners to promote a culture of readiness and preparedness. The infographic intends to enhance awareness of threats being made to schools via social media platforms, provide actionable considerations for reporting and responding to social media threats directed at school districts, and equip school safety stakeholders with a list of resources on additional information, tips, training, and education to support the safety and security of school districts. I'd like to take a deeper look at these goals over the next few slides. Next slide, please. Technology has really transformed the American school system and made education more accessible than ever before. However, technology comes with its downsides. The advancements and accessibility of various social media platforms in the United States have revealed new vulnerabilities and security gaps within schools. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, schools across the country have experienced an increase in threats of violence that originate on social media. In many incidents, these threats are unfounded, likely the result of a joke, hoax, or prank by students. Now, the Social Media Threat Guidance, or SMTG, provides a brief timeline that reflects some examples of the kinds of social media threats that have occurred and the resulting consequences, a portion of which you can see on the right side of this slide. In many incidents, the threats are discovered to be not credible by authorities, and these are called hoax threats, and whether credible or not, a singular threat can lead to the spread of misinformation as well as an influx of threats in the area. In addition to facing jail time, hoax threats have a snowball effect, resulting in canceled events, school closure, loss of resources, and unnecessary stress on the community, residents, and school. Next slide, please. So establishing mitigation and response protocols is an important part of a school's security planning strategy, and it reinforces a culture of preparedness that can enable early threat identification to protect the community, school, students, and staff. Here you can see some of the mitigation and response best practices offered by the guidance, including developing relationships with first responders. I really want to hone in on this one because if you don't already have communication with them or they are not part of your planning team, start that conversation today. It's important to establish roles and responsibilities in advance of an event. You should also check out enrolling in priority telecommunications services. Now that can really help ensure that first responders and school staff can utilize overwhelmed networks. The section also lists first steps to take when a threat is made, additional actions depending on the type of threat, and even after action steps once the threat has been resolved. Next slide. Now, we all know school safety stakeholders must be aware of the changing social media landscape and the threats that can occur across multiple platforms. Vigilance and preparedness are key elements in the stance against mitigating threats to schools. Stakeholders have a core planning team, and developing an EOP or emergency operations plan are essential elements in this process. To that end, CISA and its partners offer a variety of tools, webinars, and trainings that can serve as useful resources for the deterrence of social media threats directed at schools. On this slide, you'll see some, but not all of the fantastic resources offered by the guidance. Next slide, please. Shifting focus from social media threats, I'd like to discuss the CISA K-12 Cyber Report titled Protecting Our Future, Partnering to Safeguard K-12 Organizations from Cybersecurity Threats. Now, our nation's students are spending more time online than ever before, using technology to complete homework, communicate with peers, and engage with teachers and school staff. Our growing dependence on technology systems, coupled with emerging, evolving, and increasingly deceptive cyber threats, demands enhanced awareness and vigilance when it comes to our online world. This report lays out important steps for schools, parents, and students to stay safe online by taking proactive steps to defend against risks and strengthen cybersecurity and security both at home and within schools. Along with the report, CISA offers an online toolkit which aligns resources and materials to each of CISA's 3 recommendations, along with guidance on how stakeholders can implement each recommendation based on their current needs. Now let's take a moment to look at these recommendations over the next few slides. The first recommendation we offer is to invest in the most impactful security measures. Most K-12 entities can't enact every single cybersecurity improvement at once, but you also may not need to. The report finds that making a small number of impactful priority investments can make a big difference. So leaders at K-12 institutions can maximize the impact of their investments by carefully choosing high-value investments to begin with, and then gradually working towards long-term security goals. The K-12 community should begin by making high-priority investments like deploying multi-factor authentication, or MFA, fixing existing security flaws, and minimizing exposure to common attacks. K-12 entities should also begin performing and testing backups, developing and exercising a cyber incident response plan, and implementing a training and awareness campaign at all levels of the organization. In the near term, K-12 entities can work to fully align with CISA's Cybersecurity Performance Goals, or CPGs. Now, these are clear, actionable goals selected because they significantly and directly reduce the risk of impacts caused by commonly observed threats and tactics. And they're reasonably straightforward and not cost prohibitive for entities of all sizes. Next slide. The second recommendation is to recognize and actively address resource constraints. Probably don't need to tell you, but many school districts have limited IT resources and cybersecurity capacity. But every K-12 institution can make cybersecurity risk management a top priority. Leadership should be creative to address to address capacity issues by pursuing avenues like grants and low-cost services. And in many cases, moving from systems that are on-site or on campus to more secure cloud technologies can ease the burden on district IT services. So we recommend that school districts boost limited resources by looking for funding opportunities and grants, such as the CISA State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program and the Federal Communications Commission E-rate program. CISA maintains a list of free or low-cost services available for entities lacking resources, and that can be found on CISA.gov. Additionally, you also want to consider to address overburdened IT services. Now, again, that's when districts and schools can look into moving to secure cloud environments and manage services that don't require frequent patching and monitoring, like on-premises IT systems. Next slide. The final recommendation that we provide is focusing on collaboration and information sharing. So K-12 institutions should establish partnerships and pursue avenues for collaboration with peers so they aren't addressing cybersecurity issues in isolation. Joining relevant industry groups and establishing relationships with federal partners can help K-12 entities access powerful tools. You can leverage industry best practices and maintain awareness of the current threat and risk environments. It's really tough to maintain situational awareness in the constantly changing risk environment, which is why we recommend that all K-12 organizations participate in information sharing forums, such as the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or MSISAC, or the K-12 Security Information Exchange, commonly known as K-12-6. Now, these forums are a reliable source of information. They offer connections and they offer training. We also recommend working with other information sharing organizations such as fusion centers, state school safety groups, and other agencies to support and expand your network. There's also associations. A great example is the Consortium for School Networking, or COSN. Lastly, K-12 organizations should proactively establish relationships with their CISA regional counterparts and their local FBI field office. By opening these lines of communication, K-12 entities can stay up to date on evolving threats and risks and have someone to reach out to for questions. Next slide. The final resource suite I'd like to highlight here in the cybersecurity topic is from our partners over at the Department of Education and was done in collaboration with CISA. So we know education infrastructure is undeniably critical infrastructure. And as we've discussed previously, in the digital age, the need to prioritize cybersecurity has become more apparent than ever. Just as we work to provide physical infrastructure for our schools that is safe, healthy, and supportive for all students, the time has come to align resources towards creating a digital infrastructure that is equally safe, accessible, resilient, and sustainable. So the U.S. Department of Education, in partnership with CISA, has released the K-12 Digital Infrastructure Brief, Defensible and Resilient, to highlight cybersecurity recommendations and promising practices from states and districts across the country. Organizational cybersecurity risk management aligns people, processes, and tools to effectively identify, detect, protect, respond to, and recover from cyber incidents. As with fire safety for our physical security buildings, superintendents and IT leaders must strive to prevent cyber incidents with digital infrastructure that is defensible and resilient at the perimeter. However, leaders know it's not a question of if, but when a malicious actor will evade their perimeter defenses and gain unauthorized access. To mitigate harm and enable resilient response and recovery, districts use automated tools for detection. They train users what threats to look for and how to report them, and practice implementing incident response plans. Cybersecurity fire drills, combined with the low-cost, high-impact recommendations highlighted in this brief, have the power to dramatically reduce the cybersecurity risk for schools and districts across the country. Now, this resource is one of a series of briefs published by the U.S. Department of Education, and these briefs offer recommendations to complement the fundamental infrastructure considerations outlined in their 2017 updates to Building Technology Infrastructure for Learning. These are all meant to provoke conversations, challenge conventions, and deepen understanding. And these briefs have been purposefully designed to be easily consumed and shared. I'd like to move on to the next brief and provide an update there. The second brief is called Adequate and Future-Proof. Now, in this brief, the Department of Education emphasizes the connections, speeds, and devices that should be designed to meet the needs of modern education with plans for financial sustainability. This infrastructure should also be scalable to meet future needs. Many school districts would likely have described their infrastructure as adequate prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, where devices and bandwidth were concerned. Now, when schools and districts needed to transition within a matter of days to emergency remote learning, pain points became blaringly obvious. As the pandemic subsided, many districts and schools found the increased demand on bandwidth and numbers of supported devices has not subsided. So even with students back in physical classrooms and interfacing face-to-face with their peers and teachers, a new definition of what an adequate network remains. So educators, students, families, and leaders have come to expect constant access. They expect the ability to stream on demand and additional on-demand supports to meet their needs. Adequate is always changing. Now, this brief highlights those needs and describes how digital infrastructure should accommodate evolving technological advancements. And planning for modularity and replacement options is crucial to adapt to changing requirements. Next slide. Finally, I want to touch on the third brief in the series, subtitled Privacy Enhancing, Interoperable, and Useful. Educational leaders have the power to drive meaningful change by prioritizing digital infrastructure that is privacy enhancing, interoperable, and useful. To make this vision a reality, they should take concrete steps to establish robust data governance policies. They should adhere to relevant privacy laws and collaborate with organizations that are working toward the same goal. Leaders should seize the opportunity to advocate for data interoperability, promote data equity, and invest in data literacy, training, and expertise. So embracing these actions can shape an edtech landscape that truly supports learning, teaching, and improving outcomes for every student. Now, all of these resources are currently available, and when we distribute the slide deck, you will have an opportunity to click on the images and be brought directly to the hosting sites. So don't worry if you didn't copy a full title down or had to step away during their description. With that, I would like to turn things over to Kurt Tilley, who will be discussing some resources offered by the CISA Office for Bombing Prevention. Kurt, the floor is yours.
Ryan, thank you very much. As Ryan said, I want to talk to you about some of the resources that we offer here at OBP. As Ryan mentioned, the social media threats, that's one of the areas that we want to talk about. In addition to the actual threat ID or device threat, one of the areas that we focus on is bomb threats. So next slide. What I want to talk to you a little bit about is that current trend that we're seeing, and we've certainly seen over the last couple of years a significant rise in bomb threats. And this data comes from our internal data here at CISA, as well as combined with our partners at the FBI and ATF to scrub and get a really good number. The top graph there that you can see, in 2021, as a nation, we experienced 1,876 bomb threats. That rose by 35% to over 2,500 in 2022, and rose by another 25% this past year to now well over 3,000 threats that we saw, bomb threats that we saw in 2023. I know it's a little small to see, but the graph on the right-hand side, you will see that the number one target of those bomb threats is education, with of that 3,000, 1,100 of them being geared towards education facilities. Now, this takes into account everything from actually from daycare facilities all the way through higher education, but overwhelmingly the number one category there is the middle school and high school of those 1,100 threats. And as Ryan mentioned with the social media threats, what we see is the majority of these, the overwhelming majority of these, are hoax threats. But even though they are hoax threats, what we understand is that with a bomb threat, it still has impacts. It can, depending on what your response to that threat is, it can certainly have operational impacts, financial impacts, and psychological impacts for both the staff and the students. Next slide. So what I want to talk to you about is some of the resources that we have available. So for OBP, we have a number of tools that are available. We're going to highlight today some of the training and some of the products. So the top two quadrants there are some of the things we're going to highlight today. But we have other resources available, including, I will point out, the Tripwire website, which is a DHS run website that shows and keeps track on all of this data, as well as a What's New Daily that discusses incidents across the country, from actual incidents to bomb threats and those types of things. So it kind of keeps everyone up to speed on what's going on across the country. Next slide. So let's focus primarily on the training that's available, as we think that one of the key resources that we provide is that understanding of how to manage and mitigate these threats when they occur. One size does not fit all, and there is not a singular solution on how to deal with the threat when it's received. So one of the things we want to be able to do is provide as much information on how to manage those threats and mitigate the risk, as I said. So we have a diverse curriculum of training and product that's available. Everything that we have, as you see, is free of charge and at no cost. All of our training is accredited, so it does issue CEUs through the International Accrediting Association for Continuing Education Training. And for those, if there are school resource officers on the call, all of our courses also are supported through IATLIST, which is the International Association for Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training, meaning it meets their requirements for their in-service and post credits, regardless of what state you're in. Next slide. So we offer our training in a range of modalities. Basically, what fits for your availability and for your needs is what we try to work toward. So we have a number of in-person courses. We deliver these as through a mobile training team that comes to your location, puts on the courses. These courses are typically longer. They range from anywhere from 1 day to 3 day long. But these courses are designed just for that. They're more performance or management level courses. So they're designed to kind of impart those type of activities. We have our virtual instructor-led courses. These courses, we offer 9 of them a week. They're through a rotational basis, so they're offered every week. And these range from approximately an hour to 90 minutes. Again, available to the general public. These are more awareness level courses, and so certainly available. Our self-paced independent study. So these are your typical online web-based courses that you can take anytime. They're not scheduled. They're to be taken at your convenience. All of these are under an hour, range from 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And again, still issue the CEUs. And then the training video series we have on CISA's YouTube channel. And these are videos that range from 3 to 6 minutes. And these are those quick hit, kind of really informative, but when you don't have a lot of time to complete an actual training event. A couple that would be key here are like our what to do, recognizing suspicious versus unattended items, a quick little 5-minute or less video that will kind of help train employees and staff. So let's talk about what are some specific guidelines or some specific resources for schools. So as you see here on the training side, for all employees, we would recommend a couple that are very easily. One is our online independent study, and that's our bomb threat preparedness and response. This is less than an hour to take, and it is just that. It kind of introduces you to how to be prepared should your facility receive a bomb threat, should you be the actual one that receives that call, or receives that email message, or actually receives the threat. So what are those steps here and how do you respond? The second one there is one of our virtual instructor leds. Again, so a scheduled course. You can also schedule this through us directly if you want to do it just for your school or your district. So this is response to suspicious behaviors and items. This introduces you how to recognize and respond to suspicious behaviors, recognize those activities, as well as recognize items related to these activities. And this is not specific to IEDs or bombing prevention, but specific to just that suspicious behavior, how to recognize and understand some of those key indicators. Then for what we would suggest for school administration and or the security, one of the newer courses that we've had that we've created since this spike in threats over the last 2 years is bomb threat assessment for decision makers. And that is a course that kind of walks through the different types of threats that are made, that threat assessment process, the implementation of a bomb threat management plan. And what that bomb threat management plan will show you is that, the answer isn't always to evacuate. There may be other ways to deal with, assess what the threat is, and you understand how to deal with that threat. So those are some of the key. It helps mitigate those financial impacts. It helps mitigate those operational impacts. The second one there, bomb threat management planning. This is a 1 day. This is a full day. This is more geared towards your management level and executive level. But this course will basically walk you through the risk mitigation and risk management process, as well as how to write a bomb threat management plan and what you need to do to have a bomb threat plan in place. And then lastly, the IED search procedures. So this course provides some low risk protocols for security professionals on what to look for. It's not just recognizing something suspicious now, but it's how to actually thoroughly search a facility, thoroughly search an open area, a hallway, those type of things. So just some key ones that we recommend in this bomb threat response that are very valuable to school employees. Next slide. The other thing that we offer are bombing prevention products. So not just the, training, but we have several types of products, and again, across a range of modalities. Starting on the right, I've already mentioned our video series out there. We have awareness posters, cards, things that are designed to be hung in an employee break room, things like that are reminders, easy access. We have guides, a full bomb threat guide, these types of things on how that walks you through the entire writing of a plan, the entire process. If you don't have time for the training, then we have the product available. And then job aids and checklists. So if we go to the next slide, there'll be some that I recommend for schools in the bomb threat arena. So one of those is that bomb threat guide. This is a comprehensive guide that really helps that decision maker, whether it's the chief of security, whether it's the school administration or the district, whoever that is, on how to prepare a bomb threat plan, how to create that plan, and then how to assess and respond to those threats in an orderly and controlled manner. The second one there is the bomb threat procedures checklist. Many of you are probably familiar with this. These are the checklists that are maintained by many receptions, by who's receiving the calls. It's a easy checklist to pull out to say, walk through when you receive that bomb threat, how to document it. Even gives you some sample questions to ask, things like that. And then we have, as I said, the suspicious or unattended item. So this is how to recognize the difference between something suspicious and unattended. We have this in both cards, postcard size cards, or posters for break rooms. All of this is available through our website, through CISA.gov, but it's available through your local resources as well within CISA through your protective security advisors. And next slide. Last thing I want to point out is, and I do understand you're going to get this slide deck, but this web page here, our bomb threat page at CISA, this is something that we created in response to this unusual spike we've seen the last couple of years, and really provides all of our detailed resources that we have to help mitigate those threats as they occur. And with that, I'll turn it over to Katie.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am going to talk to you about the Secret Service National Threat Assessment Center and some of the resources that we have to offer. But before I do that, if you want to go to the next slide, I just want to let you know who we are and where we come from and why we're even talking about school safety. So the National Threat Assessment Center was formally created by the Presidential Threat Protection Act of 2000, and we were given a mission to do research, training, consultation, information sharing, and standardization, all in the realm of behavioral threat assessment and targeted violence prevention. The reason that we're in this space is within our own agency, we protect, some of our elected officials. And back in the 1990s, we realized that the way we were doing things maybe wasn't the best. We had some high-profile incidents, including the attempt on President Reagan. So we took a look at what we were doing and did some research on the thinking and behaviors of individuals who actually want to harm one of these elected officials. We found that the behaviors that were exhibited were not anomalous, that they actually emerged in multiple different attackers, and that they didn't always wait for they didn't always make a threat directed toward the person that they held, that they were targeting. So we took that research, which is actually called the Exceptional Case Study Project, and we rethought about the way we were doing things in our own agency. We went from a threat-based approach to a behavior-based approach. Most people don't use, when they're thinking about wanting to harm someone, they're not going to do a clue type reveal where they're going to name the person and the weapon they're going to use and exactly the location and time. They're going to be much more elusive. So again, not waiting for a threat, but thinking about the behaviors that they're exhibiting, those things that we can observe in others and the time leading up to the actual attack. So our definition of targeted violence is there on the screen. For us, these are not incidents where someone just snaps or it's a crime of passion or just something that a violent thing that erupted, like a fight or something like that. These are premeditated incidents of violence. A lot of times they want to harm as many people as possible, and they target initially an individual, sometimes it's a group of people or a location, and then expand from there, again, trying to harm as many people as possible. Our definition includes any type of motivation driving someone toward thinking violence is the right solution for them, whether that is a grievance that they want to resolve, or maybe they want to become famous, or if they have an extremist ideology that they want to highlight in this attack. And it's generally unrelated to other criminal activities. So if you think about what motivates someone to be a criminal or do crime, a lot of times they don't want to get caught because they want to do it again. Where these targeted violent incidents many times is a one and done. They want to have this, this big event happen and either end in suicide or if they're arrested or something like that, there's not going to be another one that happens following. Next slide. So in the Secret Service, we are that research center that looks at past incidents to learn from them so that we can try to prevent future ones from happening. And you'll see up there all of the research that we've released over the last 25 plus years. So we've been around a long time, and everything that we recommend is, again, based in that research that we do. So we're not a think tank. We don't do what other people are doing. We do the research and then we implement it here in our agency. And when it works, then we share it with other people. So a couple different kind of groupings of publications you see on the screen there, just the commonalities amongst them. We do operational guidance. We do the research findings. And a lot of times it is a number of incidents that we analyze and then provide those recommendations and findings. But there are times where we release reports of a specific incident, one case where there are so many behaviors that emerge that we just feel there's value in sharing that with some others to learn from that. So an example of that is the Hot Yoga Tallahassee case there, which was a case of someone who was motivated by misogynistic extremism. In addition to looking at incidents of targeted violence against elected officials, we have also done that in K-12 environments, colleges and universities, attacks against the federal government, and also in mass attacks in public spaces. Next slide. So for all of you, your focus is on K-12 schools. These are just highlighting our recent school safety efforts in the publications we've released. So in 2018, after the tragedy at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, we released the blue publication there called Enhancing School Safety Using a Threat Assessment Model. In that publication, we have 8 steps that we recommend people can follow on considerations as you're building out a behavioral threat assessment program. It covers things like having a multidisciplinary team, knowing that you're not just going to be looking for threatening behaviors, but any kind of behaviors that are concerning and trying to intervene as early as possible. This is a proactive approach. It also includes reporting mechanisms and some of the common behaviors that emerge from our research, as well as things to consider when you're building up management strategies to lower that risk that somebody's going to harm either themselves or someone else. In 2019, we released a report called Protecting America's Schools, and in this report, we looked at 41 incidents of targeted violence that occurred in K-12 schools in the U.S. And in 2021, we actually looked at 67 plots in K-12 schools in the U.S. So in this book, this is kind of the good news story of the research here. These were incidents where someone came forward with information, behaviors that they had observed in someone else. They made a report to someone who actually took action on that information, and they were able to interrupt a plot before the violence happened. So as close as you can come to proving that this process can work is shown in that report. Next slide. So I also want to talk to you today about some of the resources that you have available to you, and these are all at no cost, as with my other colleagues that mentioned earlier. Again, thinking about our mission, we have a mission to do training. So we do training in behavioral threat assessment. The content of the training, we start with just explaining, who we are and why we're in this space, and focusing on the research findings. And we do that to build that foundation so that people understand that the recommendations that we make are based on the research that we've done. We also share the Secret Service operational guidance and our threat assessment model, which is to identify individuals who are demonstrating some kind of concerning behavior, gathering more information to better understand the circumstances and context around that behavior, and then developing management strategies to lower that risk that they are going to conduct harm. We talk about the behavioral themes. So again, trying to pivot people, from maybe having an idea of what someone, an attacker might look like, to the actual behaviors that are exhibiting. So trying to minimize any kind of bias on age or gender or grade level or economic status or anything like that. And then we talk about resources that are available walking out the door. These are scheduled by request, and our intended audience is really for public safety professionals. That's what we're congressionally mandated to do. And so we don't necessarily talk to parents or students or like a town hall event. These would be for people who actually have a role in taking part in implementing some of the recommendations that we make. The delivery is in person or virtual, or we can mix the two together and do a hybrid where we show up in a room and you can stream it out to other people. We can do flexible duration. So if there's a conference, we can do an overview in an hour, or if you want us to really just get into the information we have to share, we can fill up a whole half day of content. And then we customize the content, and the case examples that we talk about that really emphasize some of the points we're trying to make, as well as highlighting some of the concepts. So if you are in a school and your leadership just not bought into this program, because it takes a lot of effort and time to build one of these programs out. We can really just emphasize the importance of it and show some of those success stories on the back end. If you are having trouble with people sharing information, we could definitely highlight the reasons for doing that and show examples of when it wasn't done, some of the tragedies that occurred. So we can tailor that content and emphasize the points that would make the most sense for you. Next slide. One of the things that we introduced a few months ago was having a virtual training event that we offered across the nation. We do one of these a month, and we take turns between the content, the research we've done in K-12 schools, and then in the research we've done in mass attacks in public spaces, so preventing some of that targeted violence in our communities. So they are 2-hour sessions. I highly recommend, if you have someone who's not familiar with behavioral threat assessment or our research or why this is an important thing to invest time in and energy in, to watch one of these. It costs nothing, and it's a very low lift as far as registration. You just put your name. You can use that QR code that'll get you to the registration page, or the URL, which is on the screen there, and sit and watch in the comfort of your home. You can, and if you can't stay the whole time, that's fine. You can come back, a different month. But we talk about our research, and then we talk a lot about the cases that kind of highlight some of those important points. Next slide. I mentioned earlier that we have a mission and consultation, or our mission includes consultations, and we have a two-pronged offering here. So for policy and protocol development, we're able to, through our consultation mission, take your documents, review them, and provide feedback. So, and then we can send that document to you with the markups on it, as well as meet with your team and talk through some of the suggestions that we have to offer. If you don't have anything in place and you're struggling with where to start, you're staring at that blank piece of paper, we have some suggestions and other people that we've worked with. Again, we've been around a long time, and we can send you some examples just to kind of get you started. Either of those cases, it is not a one and done. We're there to work with you throughout the process to make sure that you're comfortable with something that works in your community. The case examples, if you have a complex case, if there's an individual that you're not quite sure if you have gathered all the information to put appropriate context and understand if they pose a risk of harm or not, or if you are looking for ideas on ways to reduce that risk of harm, you can give me a call. We encourage people to kind of work through the processes that they have, but if you're just stuck and you want to brainstorm with us, we're more than happy to do that. For those cases, you would just contact your field representative, which I'll go into in just a minute, and let us know the current situation. We'll pull a team together and do a Teams call within a couple of days, just to try to get that situation moving in a positive direction. We've done these consultations for schools, for whole states, for law enforcement, for private sector organizations. So again, we have a lot of experience and knowledge in this area. Next slide. So I mentioned regional representatives. We have domestic security strategists whose position is for doing outreach and really just facilitating access from NTAC and all the research and experience we have to offer to people in the community that can use it the most. So I previously was in Chicago. I was one of the inaugural people for these regional representative positions, and was very successful. The program expanded from 2 positions. Now we have 8 that we're filling. We've got a couple that we're going to fill very soon. And just, it's very rewarding to know that we are making an impact and getting people, with a program in place so that they are able to interrupt these plots that are, in action, or even just, more basically recognizing someone who's struggling and trying to get them assistance so that they don't continue further on down a path thinking that violence is the right option for them. Next slide. So I will end on this slide. This is a link for our website. So we have a public-facing website. All of our research is available on that page. You can scan the QR code there as well. The operational guidance we have in all the different areas. You can sign up for a list or a Gov delivery. So if we have any new products or virtual trainings or anything else we have to offer, we're going to send you an email about all of that. And then finally, we have a couple videos up there. So if you, again, are trying to explain, if you're trying to implement a threat assessment program and you want to show people what that's all about, there's a quick video you can bring up and have people watch that. And then, of course, if you want to reach your DSS, that email is the best way to do it. And we are pretty responsive as far as watching that email box. So, so feel free to use that. All I have. I'll turn it now over to Ryan to close us out.
Great. Thank you so much, Katie. Kurt, thank you as well. Fantastic information provided today, and we always love having our DHS partners join us for these presentations because they are so knowledgeable in terms of the resources that they're able to provide for our K-12 communities. Before we do transition to Q&A, I do want to discuss some additional resources from my team at the CISA School Safety Task Force. Fitz, if we can go to the next slide. So for the 2023 National Summit on K-12 School Safety and Security, first of all, I want to thank those folks who were able to join our sessions back in November. And also, I want to let you all know that the resource guide and recordings are now available. So the guide includes information on the resources, programs, and tools referenced throughout the summit sessions. The recording sessions include the various masterclass sessions, keynote addresses, and panel discussions held during the event. I'm happy to say that we will be attaching the Summit Resource Guide to the PDF of these slides, and that will be shared out to everybody who registered for this virtual training. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the recordings, on this slide, you'll see the topics and speakers from our two-day summit back in November. Again, every one of these sessions were recorded and you are available to watch them at your pleasure on the CISA YouTube channel. It will include a playlist of every session and each one has been curated for ease of access. You can pause, rewind, fast forward, skip to a different speaker. Again, at your availability, these are just a click away. Next slide. One of the resources I do want to discuss is one that was referenced in Katie's presentation and one that we've talked about previously, the CISA and Secret Service K-12 Bystander Reporting Toolkit. So this resource identifies the strategies schools are currently using to ensure their reporting systems are a trusted avenue for seeking help and reporting concerns when issues arise involving student wellness and community safety. School safety and school staff and administrators who use this toolkit are presented with a framework of questions and considerations to help customize their reporting tools to fit the unique culture and context of their community. You can see here that the toolkit highlights 3 themes which help build into additional strategies. First, the creation of a trusting school environment is needed for a reporting system to thrive. Second, offering multiple anonymous or confidential options for individuals to report is beneficial. And finally, designing outreach to promote and support reporting as a prevention strategy is incredibly important. Now, this is a joint partnership between CISA and the Secret Service, and so we believe that all schools, regardless of their geographic context, maturity of reporting system, or other characteristics, will benefit from this toolkit in some way. Next slide, please. This slide actually does a really good job of showing what we call the reporting and prevention continuum. So on the left, it starts with awareness, or specifically the concerning behavior an individual may be exhibiting. And it proceeds through the right, where you can respond to the reports with trained professionals and protect that young person and the school community. Now, the CISA Secret Service K-12 Bystander Reporting Toolkit really focuses in on that yellow highlighted stage. That's really how to increase the willingness of your students and staff members to report concerns. So the methods that schools use to encourage student reporting will be unique from school to school and often reflect factors specific to local contexts. Now, this can include the number of schools served, the total number of students, geographical location, availability of resources. There are so many factors that contribute to the likelihood of student utilizing a reporting system. And so we wanted to list out as many as we could. So you can see here that we do outline many of these factors. And in the guide, we discuss which steps schools should consider to increase the willingness of students utilizing their reporting systems. Next slide, please. So overall, the toolkit emphasizes 5 key strategies that you see here. First, it encourages bystanders to report concerns for the wellness and safety of themselves or others. And it's not just violence. Reporting systems should really consider additional safety and well-being issues, such as bullying, well-being, drug use, self-harm, suicidal ideations, even depression. The second, we want to make reporting accessible and safe for the reporting community. And again, that includes anonymous or confidential reporting options. Third, we need to follow up on reports and be transparent about the actions taken in response to reported concerns. Now, when the community sees action being taken, we know that they feel like their concerns are being addressed and that they're contributing to this process. Number 4, make reporting a part of daily school life, so it's not seen as a stigma amongst the community and people feel like they're contributing. Finally, you want to create a positive climate where reporting is valued and respected. So when people do feel like they are part of that community, they are more likely to protect it. Next slide. Another great CISA product is the K-12 School Security Guide suite of resources. We've spoken at length about this in other trainings, but the guide provides a comprehensive doctrine and methodology for schools to integrate a systems-based approach to the design and implementation of layered physical security measures. Now, taking that in steps, the systems-based approach ensures that individual measures work together to offer a greater benefit than their whole, or than alone. And then incorporating that across multiple layers of a school campus, you can ensure that there exists physical security which work together to detect, delay, and respond to threats and help prevent single points of failure. Now, from those school leaders such as yourselves that have used this guide and provided feedback, we consistently hear that the guide has helped them prioritize and make physical security decisions and investments in a more strategic way through its simple step-by-step guidance. If you have not had an opportunity to review the guide, I encourage you to do so or to reach out to us for more information. Next slide. The next resource as part of the suite is the School Security Assessment Tool, or SSAT. And again, we know no two schools are alike, so we created a tool that allows for a customizable and scalable approach and incorporates the unique needs of each individual school or district. This is a web-based assessment that walks users through a tailorable vulnerability analysis, which is a systematic review of security weaknesses within their own system. Now you can see the 5 steps here, along with some key features. It's highly portable. It works on mobile devices and can be used during an actual walkthrough of the grounds. It's very simple in language and use or language and design, so you don't need to be a subject matter expert to use it. And finally, we don't store any of your data. So it does not go to the federal government, and the results can be generated and downloaded, allowing your district and staff to decide what steps, if any, can be used in the future. Next slide. So you can see here the whole K-12 guide product suite. In addition to the guide and SSAT, we have 2 web-based trainings that you can take at your own pace. They're YouTube videos, so you can pause, rewind, go back and forth, and finish them at your availability. That first one is a general user course and really explains and references the tenets eliminated in the guide. And the second is a train the trainer course. So for those of you who may ask your staff to utilize the suite. Again, all these products free to download and are available on CISA's website. They were created to help our partners most effectively incorporate the identified practices within. Next slide. The final resource I want to discuss are CISA's Protective Security Advisors and the PSA program. So we heard them referenced earlier in the presentation. Our PSAs are experts in critical infrastructure protection and vulnerability mitigation. Now, these folks engage with government partners and private sector stakeholders to protect the nation's critical infrastructure. So they can help plan, coordinate, and conduct security and resilience surveys and assessments, and they also can serve as liaison with local authorities and DHS during and after emergencies. So I highly encourage you to find your regional office by clicking that Contact Your Regional Office Today link once you receive these slides, or you can visit cisa.gov/regions to find yours today. With that, I'd like to turn things back over to Fitz, who will conclude the virtual training and begin our Q&A session.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Katie and Curtis, for all the fantastic information and resources brought to light in today's presentation. Before we discuss contact information and move on to Q&A, I do want to highlight the link to our post-training poll questions that has been published in chat. Again, you should see that on the right side of your screen there. Once again, we do want to thank you for your participation in these polls. I want to point out our contact information on the slide that you see on your screen. Once again, this will also be made available following today's virtual training, along with a copy of the presentation. Please follow us on Twitter or X for upcoming events and news, and email us any additional questions. Additionally, please feel free to scan the QR code on the slide to sign up for school safety news and updates. With that, we'll move on to our first question of the day.